The Isle is the worst game in early access, and I can prove it! So, yeah. Kind of lost my mind making this video. Oops. The Isle is the worst game in early access, and you don't really get that title for being simply a bad game or a glorified asset flip, because let me be clear, The Isle is one of the most creative and inspiring games that I've ever played, developed by some of the most talented people in the games industry. It's also the worst thing to ever come out of the Steam's Greenlight program, and the worst thing that's ever happened to me personally. If you are 20 years old, sad, and some gamer girl on Discord asks you to play a game with her, it's a trap. Don't do it. No, stop. No, she's going to ruin your life. Stop it. No! 5 years and 1,000 hours later, and I am here with a warning. Do not play The Isle. In today's video, I want to take a look at The Isle as a game, its different builds that led us to where we are now, some of its controversies, and take a quick glance at the evil mastermind behind all of this. The Isle is the worst game in early access, and I can prove it. Play the intro. If it wasn't already obvious, yes, The Isle is a game about dinosaurs, but it's so much more than that, especially when the game dropped on early access back in 2015. You see, 2015 was a pretty good year for dinosaur games. There's the Hunter Primal, a game you can't even buy anymore because lost media is the game industry's bread and butter. Primal Carnage Extinction, a dinosaur vs humans PvP game that sadly appears to be dead. Lego Jurassic World, a game clearly made with adult gigachads like myself in mind. And Ark Survival Evolved, a small indie game that didn't really sell very well, so it's probably not going to get a sequel. Wait, is that Vin Diesel? What you'll notice quickly about nearly all dinosaur games at the time is humans. In some form, whether it be big or small, humans were at the forefront of all dinosaur games for the time. Enter The Isle, a game that dared to ask the question, what if our development cycle took so long that humans never got added? What would a game like that be like? I'm going to give you all a brief rundown of The Isle before we jump into the this game sucks part of the video, because like I said before, The Isle is pretty good at what it's trying to do. Big emphasis on trying. Allowing players to play as dinosaurs was pretty new back in the days of 2015 and the years that followed. But playing as a dinosaur wasn't what made The Isle so special. The Isle is a survival horror game not for the faint of heart. You spawn in as a baby dinosaur of your choice and that's it! Best of luck, you stupid worm! The gameplay loop of The Isle is simple. You traverse around a large map, gathering resources, eating, drinking, trying not to die, with every other living thing out there being another player with intentions you can't comprehend. No, really, you can't even ask them. There is no text chat. I mean, there is, but you can only talk to other dinosaurs of your own species. This is where The Isle's unique system of communication comes into play, called calls. Dinosaurs can't talk, more news at 6. Instead, they make roaring and honking sounds, and you'd be amazed at how much characterization you can actually squeeze out of that simple concept. Pressing 1 will initiate a broadcast call, allowing other players to hear you from across the map and potentially allowing them to locate you from long distances, with the main drawback being that if they don't get to you fast, something else just might. Pressing 2 initiates a friendly call. This will be your main means of informing other players that you're just a cute little guy with good intentions, and you can also use it as a means of creating herds. This is the Isle's version of groups. 3 is your threaten call. If someone is getting a tad too close and you don't like it, this is how you let them know that you're ready to throw down if they don't keep their distance. And lastly, you have 4, which is your help call. If you're in a herd of your own species and you see a threat, it's kind of stressful having to stand still to type out that something is eating your butthole. Instead, you just press 4 and everyone will know that you either need help or that you've spotted a threat. Or, you know, maybe they'll just let you die because, I mean, hey, that's your problem, buddy. Everyone else is too busy eating that yummy grass. Nom, nom. Oh god, what the fuck is wrong with me? Now, with it being a survival game, one of the biggest challenges was obtaining food. And for herbivores like this little guy,
Audio Jungle,
it's not really that much of a challenge. The real challenge is that for some players, if you want to eat, you're going to have to kill for it. Now this is where the Isle gets interesting. For half the player base, the game is about eating plants and heading to migration zones. What's a migration zone? No. But you aren't just playing a dinosaur constantly hunting for food. You are the food. Enter carnivores. Carnivore players spawn as babies as well, scavenging what they can to survive and sustaining themselves off of the available NPC wildlife around the map. But you don't stay small forever. Eventually, you're gonna get bigger, and so does your stomach. From here, your mission is simple: kill. I mean, sure, playing a herbivore sounds nice, but remember that you aren't just a player in a video game. You're a key element to the gameplay loop. You are a valuable resource that only becomes available to other players when your fun is over. You aren't just in a field eating some yummy plants. You're in a field eating some plants looking over your shoulder every 10 seconds. And the game knows that's what you're doing because they updated the game to make it that whilst you are eating, the camera locks itself to a 90-degree angle view of what's in front of you. You cannot turn the camera around to see what's behind you. When you're filling your hunger bar, you are now vulnerable to filling up someone else's. Oh shit, I died. Okay, well that's fine. I'll just respawn and... Oh, I'm a baby again. Wait, did I just lose 4 hours of my life growing a dinosaur? Holy shit. This right here, okay? This right here is what makes encounters so fun, so stressful, and so frustrating. And I love it. You aren't just fighting for your life when you're under attack. You're panicking about losing the last 5 hours of hard work that you put into the game. You fuck up a single tail swing, headbutt, or kick, and it's over. And same goes for carnivores. If they fail to hunt, they're going to go hungry, and they're going to die of starvation. They might even be dying of hunger whilst they are fighting you. This is what makes the game so tense. You're not attacking another player because you want to. You're doing it because if you don't, you're going to die. Kill or be killed. Well, you know, that's fine. As a herbivore, I'll just keep an eye out and not let anything get the jump on me. Yeah, about that. Nighttime. You cannot see the threat coming anymore. The nighttime lasts as long as the day does. This nightmare right here is half of the game, and I love it. Now, you'll recall that I called the Isle a survival horror game. Playing an eat dirt simulator is all fine and dandy, but where's the horror in my survival horror game? You've got such a good memory. I'm proud of your ability to remember things I said 2 minutes ago. The horror aspect of the Isle kicks in at nighttime. As a herbivore, you can see on average with night vision on around 10 to 20 meters in front of you. Carnivores with the correct dietary requirements, however, can see 20 to 40 meters. Oh fuck. If a carnivore has you sitting on the edge point of their night vision range, they know for a fact that you can't see them. During the day is when you as a herbivore gain your value. Nighttime is where carnivores come to collect. There is nothing scarier than hearing a carnivore that you cannot see but can hear chatting to all of his buddies on how they're going to rip you to pieces. All you can do is wait for the biggest fight of your life. Literally. At last it's daytime. Oh hey, there's some yummy meat over there. Maybe I'll grab a bite and grab some of that water as well after the horrors of the night. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I forget to mention that no water source is safe and can be an instant game over? As both a herbivore and a carnivore, one of the most important resources you'll need in order to survive is water. And water is the most dangerous resource to obtain. There's plenty of the stuff. In fact, it's everywhere. Go on, have a drink. Don't be shy. Dinosuchus, or Dinosuchus? I can't wait for those Isle players to be angry at me about that. You know the ones that probably got triggered because I used the stego sound effects on the Ankylosaurus before. Oh god, did I even say that name right? Oh, I'm sure I'll find out in the comments. Dinosuchus is the core to half of the nightmares this game's going to give you, and also acts as a vital element to how players bump into each other organically. When every single stream and river is infested with an
"Oh, hello there. I'm here to ask you about your car's extended warranty"
type threat that you cannot see, drinking water becomes a game of luck. A scary, stressful game of luck. However, there are some spots on the map that are safe to drink at. This is because either the water is too shallow for a gator to hide, or it's too far inland for them to be able to access it without getting themselves killed in the process. With the biggest problem being that every experienced player knows where is safe to drink, including carnivores. Do you risk drinking at this river in the middle of nowhere where a gator might kill you instantly and you lose everything? Or do you go to where you know a suchus won't be, but other players might be waiting for you? Herbivores can never catch a fucking break in this game, and it's what makes this game so scary. It's very, very thrilling and I love it. Interactions are always tense, the night is scary, the day is stressful, and there is nothing more nerving than watching your hunger bar go up, your water go down, and hearing a raptor in the distance. It's just, oh man. This is the Isle, and I love it. Oh, that was nice, wasn't it? I hope that my fellow Isle players enjoyed the video. You can go now. Goodbye! Are they gone? Sweet. The Isle is the worst gaming experience I have ever had, and now I'm going to make it your problem! Starting with Isla Spiro. 5 years ago, the Isle development team dropped Hope, an inspiring trailer that detailed the future of the Isle. A complete rework of the game from the ground up. Better mechanics, cooler graphics, and a brand new map. This is the Evrima branch. There are two versions of the Isle that you get when you buy the game. The legacy branch of the game, which has been abandoned, and the Evrima branch, which is currently in development. For the sake of this video, I won't be talking too much about Legacy outside of discussing development details here and there. So if you are interested in knowing more about Legacy, go check out Soviet Womble's video on the topic. For now though, let's stay focused on Evrima. Isla Spiro was the new map introduced when the Evrima branch went live, and at the time it was a breath of fresh air to see a map with such vibrant colors, warm lighting, and everything was looking up. I mean sure, there were only 2 to 3 playable dinosaurs at the time, but this was the start of a new journey for the development team. Isla Spiro went through many changes over the years, some of them good and some of them terrible. But Isla Spiro generally kept most of the large brush strokes around its map design even throughout all of its changes. And it is a very intelligently designed map. I want to talk about the things that I love about this map, specifically because it illustrates just how much this development team is against the concept of fun. And I don't mean that to be mean, it's clear that the changes that came to the map were either tough choices or were the demands of one person who was frustrated at how players were enjoying the game. More on that later. Isla Spiro 3 is by far one of the most intelligently designed maps the Isle, or any game, has ever had, and I will die on that hill. A lot of players don't like Isla Spiro because of everything being the same biome, trees, grass, more trees, and that's completely understandable. However, the way this map was designed was very clever, whether that was intentional or not. Isla Spiro has two things going for it: discoverability and organic player junctions. Let's start with discoverability. Isla Spiro is a very simple map. You have 4 large waterways, a swamp, the central open plains, and large canopies of trees encircling the waterways around central plains, sprawling out to the coastlines, with a few medium-sized pockets of open grass space scattered around here and there. With each waterway correlating to 2 general directions on a compass, it made it much easier to always figure out where you were along that waterway once you'd looked around at some general visual indicators. For example, if you are standing here and you want to figure out where you are, you simply sniff and face north. There is a waterway to your right and the open central plains to your left. When you sniff, you can smell and sense that there is a waterway that bends to the left ahead of you. This would mean that you are either here or here. Walking 100 meters, you'll realize that the river bend does not split, so now you've confirmed that you are here. As long as you know the map vaguely, for this playthrough, you will never be lost ever again. And remember, there is no button you can press to pull up a map. You have to learn this shit. And it's good that the map was designed to be learned fairly quickly, whether that be from landmarks, the small amount of waterways, or just the simple geography of everything around you. With there only being 4 waterways, you can identify which one you're at and in turn find out where you are when you spawn. This not only made the map much easier to learn, but also made your early hours for every playthrough less confusing. You know where you are, so now you know where you want to go. Discoverability and memorability all in one. And this is where the organic player junctions come into play. Some places on the map are just cooler than others, whether that because they have some cool visuals or there's just plenty of food and water around the place. We'll discuss the scenery shortly, but let's talk about the dangers of the waterways. As we discussed before, Deinosuchus makes the waterways dangerous, and there really are only 4 waterways for them to hide in. Sure, the waterways are long, and those Deinosuchus could be anywhere along them, but you don't know the specifics of that, leading many players to want to play it safe. This naturally incentivizes players to look for safer locations to cross the waterways. This is an organic player junction. In making a single playable dinosaur a threat, it incentivizes players to bump into each other at these safe spots. The most common one of this version of Spiro was called Shallows, located here, a stretch of water too shallow for crocs to hide in, making it not only a safe crossing strip, but also making it a safe location to obtain water, a resource that all players are in need of all the time, meaning this location was always populated with at least 2 to 3 players at any given time. And the map is full of fun little locations that cater to player interactability just like this. They're everywhere. One location everyone loved was just called South, and this is where a lot of players made some of the best memories in the Isle, or at least I sure did. It was a waterfall full of fish for carnivores next to an open field full of plants for herbivores, with a waterway small enough that most players could jump over it, avoiding death. And in many instances, some players treated South as a safe zone, a place to look at other dinosaurs and just be a silly little guy without the risk of something munching on your bottom. Isla Spiro was full of fun little landmarks, and it was these organic player junctions that instigated a lot of what makes the Isle so fun. Hunts, fights, social gatherings, tag, you name it, and these locations were the epicenter of those interactions. Isla Spiro, whilst being very samey with its visuals, was a map designed to be discovered and explored. 4 out of the game's 5 spawn locations were around the Central Plains, and there's a reason for that. In the Central Plains, there is nowhere to hide for long, as the bushes were only safe as long as nothing else walked in them as well. It's an open hunting field, and that was intentional. If you were to say spawn here, and you want to head to south, you can either play it safe and walk for an hour around the map where less players will see you in the tree line, or you could be where you want to be in 15 minutes at the cost of someone hungry spotting you crossing the vast vast open plains. Isla Spiro was a risk-reward heaven, designed from the ground up to be discovered, with landmarks designed to instigate player interactability, whether you were ready for it or not. And it was amazing. And then they completely destroyed it! I hope you enjoyed Zenny's joy-filled nostalgia trip down Life is Good lane, because now it's time to get angry. Isla Spiro's 4th iteration ruined everything and is a spit in the face of everything that made this map so fun. And despite hating what happened, I'm not going to act like I don't understand why they did it. The developers had a means of tracking players on heat maps, and what they found they didn't like. Players were chilling, hunting, and fighting in the open plains consistently, and any landmarks distinct enough to catch players' attentions were becoming massive hotspots. Players were only utilizing a third of the map, and Deinosuchus were hugging the waterway along center because that's where the meat was. They had designed this large map but didn't fill it with enough interesting stuff for players to chill at, and it was making everyone clump together. Well, that's alright, they added some more landmarks in places they wanted players to be, and that fixed everything, right? Right? No! The shallows, too many players and too safe, gone. South, too many players hanging out together, destroyed. I'm sorry, were you having fun detonating the nukes now? Why do you think I used pictures of South and shallows? It's because they aren't real anymore. They drained the water from shallows, so now it's just a strip of dirt that looks like shit. And South went from a vibrant metropolis where all dinosaurs were welcome to a hermit hellscape for gators where even the birds aren't welcome. Whoa, whoa, ah! And you want to know what's insane? These heat maps weren't even from Spiro 3. These are from Spiro 4 after they removed all the fun. So now we know removing landmarks does not stop players from clumping. New landmarks in other places makes players stop clumping. How do I know this? Because they added a new landmark called Oasis, a beautiful large pond in the southern region of the Central Plains, and you can see on the heat map that everyone loved it. So did they learn their lesson? No, because they got rid of Oasis as well. It's a fucking mud pit now. They were so anti-Central Plains that they killed off all of its landmarks and added a massive new waterway, cutting it in half to make it less convenient to travel. I can't even get mad though, it looks so beautiful. And even after all of this, they kept adding more landmarks. They added a pointy rock to West Spawn, and the average Isle player turned it into the next big thing. We are not hard to please. Just add some climbable shit around your map with a pond next to it, and the child in us makes the fun. If your first reflex to seeing players having fun in your game is to remove the elements making the game fun instead of adding to the fun, you're not making a game for players. You're making a game for you. And that's fine, I guess, but I'm not here to advocate for development vision. I'm here to discuss why this game I love keeps hurting me. But you wanna know what's insane? You wanna know what's fucking diabolical? After all of this, they deleted the map! You can't even play Isla Spiro anymore! The only reason I have footage of Isla Spiro 4 is because they've kept the map as its own branch for the time being, but there's no players here! Instead, they're all playing on the new map, Gateway! And don't worry, we'll be getting to the Gateway real soon! But before Gateway came into reality, the development team figured out a way to finally get players to move around their map. And that diabolical idea is called... Holy shit. Migration is the joke answer to the question of how do we stop players from clumping. The developers aren't a bunch of idiots. They did find ways to move players around their map for the briefest moment of time. The developers thought up the idea of diets, a way to encourage players to move around the map to find food. Food originally was just a means to stop yourself from starving. Diets, however, allowed players to grow faster if they ate the right kinds of food groups. Food groups were only located in specific specific parts of the map. You had 3 nutritions: S's, dots, and lines. If you had a shitty diet, you would grow slower. However, if you moved around the map, tracking down where all of the food groups are, you'd be rewarded with a faster growing dinosaur and better stats. And that is pretty cool. And then they fucked it up with migrations. Migration is the game's current means of keeping players moving around the map, and respectfully, it's a fucking joke that actively ruins core features of the Isle's late game. You used to be able to find all kinds of food that you would need around the map, with small trips here and there to get some extra if you felt like stat maxing. Migrations, however, killed it. Migrations made it that all of your dietary requirements, S's, dots, and lines, were in one location. Pretty cool, right? No! You fool! Migration zones are consistently moving and will only have a specific amount of food, with hardly any regenerative food present as well. Meaning that if you are at one end of the map, in order to grow your dinosaur without the bullshit that this game throws at you, you have to walk for 30 to 40 minutes on Gateway in order to get proper food, with the biggest drawback being that you don't know when the migration zone is going to swap to the other end of the map that you were just at. You can walk for an hour looking for the smallest slither of food you need, only for it to swap to a different location, resulting in another 30 minutes of wasted time. If it takes up to the refund timer of 2 hours for a fresh player to engage with one of the core mechanics of your game, I'm sorry, but you've made your game wrong. Hi, Editing Zenny here. While the migration zones are a load of bollocks, the developers have updated the game to offer what's called a patrol, or at least that's what I've been told they're called. This acts as a smaller and closer independent migration zone that will allow you plenty of nutrition for you to get started. This is a pretty cool change, and the developers do deserve credit for it. On an unrelated note that has nothing to do with migration zones, I swear, I promise I'm not making a point, let's talk about nesting. If you somehow manage to get your dinosaur to near full growth and find another player of the same dinosaur of the opposite gender, you can do an ambiguous animation and start laying some eggs. From here, you collaborate to keep the nest safe and maintain a balanced temperature. This nest will now allow other players to spawn in as your babies. And with them being your babies, they not only share a mix of both parents' colors, but also your mutation. What's a mutation? Nesting is this game's equivalent of the end game. You're making your own unique herd that can dominate large portions of the map if your herd is smart enough to do so. However, before you've made your herd, nesting requires you to remain in a single location for long periods of time. It sometimes takes hours for a player to spawn in on your nest, meaning you have to stay in a single location for sometimes hours at a time. You want to know what doesn't mingle well with a game system that requires for you to stay still? The biggest mechanic in the game demanding that you be always on the move or you're fucked. See why I can't stand migration zones? Even if you nest at a migration zone, the food's going to run out, the migration zone's gonna leave, and now your entire herd is barely surviving on grass. An infinite food source that gives 0 stats and will only fill your stomach up to 20%. If you try to nest, you are always hungry, always weak, and are always at the mercy of any carnivores that find you. Better point, it's miserable. You've worked hard to get where you are, and your reward is to engage with a new element of the game that is being screwed by everything else. Now, for experienced players like me, I know where these migration zones relatively are, and I can just choose to spawn close to where there should be one when I'm starting off as a fresh dinosaur. Hi, Editing Zenny here again. They removed your ability to pick your spawn location. It's random now. God, isn't game development so wonderful? You want to know who doesn't know anything about this game? New players. In fact, the game doesn't do anything to teach you anything. And trust me, I checked and have a full-blown study to prove it. The Isle is not new player friendly. It is a hard game that teaches you nothing and expects you to read dev blogs to understand the changes that are fired at this game rapidly. And to prove this, I didn't just ask players what their first few hours were like, because the kind of players that stuck around are the kind of players that are willing to put up with bullshit. When it comes to how the game plays, I didn't just ask existing players, I made my own. I sat down 7 people and forced them to play the Isle, going in blind to the experience. The criteria for all of these players was simple. Each player had played games on a PC before, knows how to play on a keyboard, and has had a Steam account for at least 2 years at minimum. These are all avid gamers who know how to play video games, and I made them play the Isle. Every player was sat down in a room alone with me observing them. Every player was allowed to ask questions when they got stuck, confused, or just didn't know what to do, and I documented the first 3 questions that every player asked. Every player played the game for 1 hour, with each player asked 3 questions at the end of their play session. But we'll get to those questions in a minute. The more important questions were the questions that they were asking me. Let's start with player 1. I didn't realize it at the time, but player 1 was going to be the start of a trend that would not stop. Player 1's questions were, how do I find food? How do I see? And where is safe? Now, player 1 isn't an idiot. Before asking me how to find food, you can see in this footage that they are pressing buttons and eventually presses Q and notices something appear on the screen. Player 1 noticed the animation, realized it was her dinosaur smelling, and held down Q to extend the animation. Player 1 figured out the smelling system all on their own. But guess what? They held down Q, nothing new like food appeared on the compass, and then they assumed from that there was no reason to hold down Q and never did it again. If you don't hold down Q, your dinosaur will not be able to pick up food that is farther away, meaning player 1, without the opportunity to ask me questions, would have never found food, would have starved to death, and that would have been their first experience in the game. Player 2's questions were quite similar, but gave me a good laugh as well. Question 1 being, how do I run? This is player 2. As you can see, there is nothing behind those eyes. Their second question was, like player 1, how do I find food? I told them you hold down Q and try to sniff out meat. They were playing as a carnivore. What surprised me is that player 2, unlike player 1, associated the symbols of footprints on the migration zone indicator, and without asking me what it was, started moving towards the migration zone, which is where the food should be. And you want to know how he was rewarded for that intuition? He made it to the migration zone, and it was empty. No players to hunt, and no AI or NPCs to kill. On his second attempt to find food as a new raptor, because, you know, cliffs weren't his friend, he was in a patrol zone inside a migration zone, and there was still no AI or NPCs or any kind of food for his baby raptor. This is where his third question struck me hard. Am I doing this right? Player 2 was doing everything right with barely any guidance from me at all, and was still struggling to understand how to play the game. And this trend continued for everyone. Player 3, is there food? Is there a way to find food? And how do I get stamina? Oh, you sweet summer child. We'll talk about the stamina system real soon. Player 4, what is edible? Clearly confused on how his herbivore couldn't eat the plants surrounding him. How do I see? And what's that thing at the top of the screen? Player 5, how do I eat? How do I see? And what do those symbols mean? Player 6, what's that gesturing to the migration symbols? What's that gesturing to the mutation system? And oh my god, mutations! And player 7, whose biggest question was, and say it with me, what is edible? Player 3 was the only player to figure out that if you press tab, it brought up your character sheet, saw that his food was said to be located at the coast, flew to the nearest coast, found none of the food that was promised, and died. Player 6 was the only person to notice the mutation system, and it was already after they'd missed the first window for their first mutation. Not only is this game not telling players what systems do, but it's not even telling them that they even exist. Case in point, what are mutations? As you grow your dinosaur, you can select 3 different intervals of specialized buffs that allow your dinosaur to do things better. The game does not tell the player what mutations are, how they work, or how you unlock
unlock them. What it does do is allows this flashing icon at the corner of the screen. What are players supposed to do with that? Player 3 asked, how do I get stamina? Is player 3 an idiot? No. He's not! Somehow the game made the concept of stamina a load of bollocks! Back in the days of Isla Spiro, stamina was a simple thing. Stamina regenerated at multiple different speeds. Slow if you were walking, not as slow if you were walking slowly, fast if you were standing still, and much faster if you were laying down. Someone in the development team saw the simple concept of stamina regenerating and decided you should suffer. With the new gateway map, the game adopted a new stamina system. If you are running and you get your stamina to 59% and you decide to walk, your stamina will not regenerate. What you have to do if you want to regenerate stamina and keep moving is set your walk to slow by pressing Z. If you're running and your stamina drops to 39%, you can no longer regenerate stamina whilst moving. You have to stand still or lie down. And if your stamina is anything below 25%, you have to lie down. To put it simply, if a new player runs until they are out of stamina, if they stand still for all eternity until the end of time, they will not see a single point of stamina regenerate. Here's the same dinosaur in Isla Spiro and Gateway with no stamina remaining. If you look closely, you can see that even with the dinosaur walking in Isla Spiro and the other one laying down in Gateway, walking regenerates stamina faster in the old stamina system compared to laying down in the new stamina system. What I find interesting though is that despite the new stamina being slower to start with, it ended up picking up speed and caught up, which means that stamina regenerates slower the lower it is. Is this game designed to just be mean? I mean, yes, it incentivizes players to manage their stamina better, but the game tells you none of this. And even if it did tell you the percentages, how are you going to tell? The stamina bar is a foot! You have to press tab and hover over your stamina bar to check its percentage. But guess what? According to my research, 6 out of 7 new players don't even know this screen exists. At the end of all the playtesting, I asked 3 questions. Question 1. What are some of the things you liked about the game? All 7 players listed graphics, 4 listed the call system, 2 enjoyed the combat, and you want to know what 6 out of 7 players listed? The food system. Wait, what? Everything around the food system. The smelling, the hunting, the scavenging, and managing nutritions. All of it. Nearly all players enjoyed it. After I told them about it. It's clear that this game can be fun for new players once they know what they're doing. But not everyone has an idiot like me. And without me, barely anyone would have known what they were doing. Player 4 got so sick of not knowing what buttons do that they just pulled up the controls in the menu. And if players are stopping the fun to look up menus, find tutorials, or seek aid on Discord servers, I'm sorry, but you've done something wrong here. The old version of the Isle that hasn't been touched in 5 years has tutorials, so there is no excuse here. The second question I asked players was, what don't you like? And it became very clear that everyone was having the same problem. Player 1 stated that there isn't much to do. Player 2 didn't like the absence of food for carnivores. Player 3 didn't like that they didn't find any other players despite the server being full. Player 4 struggled to understand how to get places due to no map and too many obstacles during travel. Player 5 didn't like there being no map. Player 6 didn't like how empty the map felt, and Player 7 echoed the same points of 5 and 6. Every single one of these problems players complained about stems from one thing, and it's Gateway's map. Players 1, 2, and 3 got bored looking for people because players are just spread too thin on such a large map, and everyone else just couldn't stand how hard it was to get where you wanted to be. The only thing that new players can do when they spawn in is head to these markers on the compass. But Gateway's map is just designed to be a pain in the ass. Mountains in the way, river, 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 mountain in the way, cliff face, mountain, fence, mountain, mountain, river, mountain, fuck! Where Isla Spiro had the brains to weave people together at those organic player junctions I talked about, Gateway suffers from inorganic junctions. Instead of designing the map around incentivizing players to bump into each other with risks to their fun, Gateway intentionally makes traversal a nightmare in order to lock players into walking along the pathways. And sure, you don't have to walk the literal path, but with the map being infested with walls, gates, tunnels, and cliffs, trying to find your own way becomes a chore. And it's not like you can pull up a map or anything. You're not bumping into other players due to a fun mutual wanting to live. You're bumping into players because the game's forced you down this way because there is no other way. Spiro had 4 waterways and a swamp. This is Gateway. What the fuck is this? It's a mishmash of roads, rivers, cliffs, and mountains. So convoluted and confusing that the second you deviate off the roads on the far reaches of the map, you're either going to starve or whee! There are a lot of valid reasons why new players should suffer. It's a survival game after all. The point is for it to be hard to, be alive. But these players weren't struggling with surviving. The player testers were struggling with how to interact with the game systems that are a key part of survival. My critique here isn't that the game is too hard for new players. My critique here is them not explaining how to even play the game. New players are too busy fiddling through tutorials, asking friends questions, reading dev blogs, and clicking through menus that by the time they even know how to play and they can finally figure out if this game is made for them, it's been over 2 hours and it's too late for them to refund a game that may not have been their thing. And lastly, I asked all of these players if they could describe the Isle in one word, what would it be? And here are their answers. If you could describe your experience playing the game in a single word, what would it be?
Might have been a bit boring.
Fun. Frustrating.
Addictive.
Different.
Repetitive.
Realistic.
Realistic. I have nothing to say. I'm just going to let that breathe. I can spend hours talking about all of these player experiences, but I think I can get my whole point across right here, right now. The Isle is so non-user friendly that when you buy the game and press install, it doesn't even install the right game. If you go on Steam right now, buy the Isle and press install, it's going to install the version of the game that hasn't been touched in over 5 years. What you need to do is press install, go to the game's Steam properties, click betas, click on the Evrima branch, and then it will install the version of the game that you saw on YouTube that you want to play that's been in development for over 5 years. What? Does the old version of the game tell you that it's not in development anymore and to go access the beta branch? No! It doesn't even tell you that Evrima exists! Does the Steam page refer to Evrima, at all? The game's Steam page has not been updated in years. It's the old game's screenshots, the old game's trailer, and the old game's description, which makes sense considering that when you click install, it installs the old version of the game, but is this like a bit? Are there cameras filming me right now? I only ask because this all feels like a joke. I mean, for Christ's sake, the game studio is called Afterthought, for fuck's sake.
For God's sake, man! Don't even get me started! started on the roadmap.
Before we talk about the roadmap and updates, I want to make it very clear that development cycles being long is not a bad thing. This game could have been in development for 2 years, 10 years, or even 20, and that would not be a problem. It is not up to us when a game is done. If Afterthought want to have a small team working on a game for the long haul, that is fine, and I will not critique that because it's stupid to do so. Let's talk about some good things first. Since the early days of Avrima, the developers have been doing monthly devlogs, updating everyone on what they are currently working on. They have a Trello page illustrating their goals heading from update to update, and while the content may be getting added slowly, there is still plenty reassurance that more is on the way. The game made $22 million during its fresh early access days, so the game is definitely coming. Just know that when it gets here, it might not be the game that you wanted. The Isle is a game where nothing stays consistent for long, be it maps, mechanics like stamina, or even just the night vision. Remember that part of the video 65 million years ago where I praised the night vision? Yeah! Well, the footage you're looking at right now is the new night vision. The next two things I want to talk about are completely my opinion, and I'll try to make a good case for it, but if you disagree, that's completely fine, and I even understand. Okay, here we go. Number 1. I hate the dinosaurs we've been getting in the dinosaur survival game. The Isle has some really cool dinosaurs as of current. They all look great and the sound design is amazing. What isn't amazing are the consistent gimmick inserts and the effects to the game's ecosystem. We've talked about the game's ecosystem. All players are meat for carnivores and all carnivores need meat in order to survive. This instigates a conflict of interest and makes the video game happen. What isn't good is having a map this big, a server player limit this small, and having so many dinosaurs not providing anything to the ecosystem. Firstly, let's discuss the smallest dinosaurs on the roster. The Hypsy is a small dinosaur with the ability to exchange volumes of their food bar to create a blinding bile that can be shot at enemy players in order for you to escape. Troodons are pack hunters that utilize venom to stack on prey in order to deal high damage, and the Danger Duck is an aquatic playable that survives on fish. All three are really cool playables, and I am not going to say that they don't deserve to exist. What I'm saying is if players play these little guys, the ecosystem becomes out of balance and suffers for it. If you have 10 stegos in a server, that's 60 tons of meat waiting to be served. If you have 10 Hypsies instead, that doesn't even make up 1 ton of meat. The survivability of carnivores plummets the more players play these small class dinosaurs. Before I try to make my case in point, let me discuss the second type of dinosaur that I feel are a detriment to the game. Number 2, dinosaurs that rely on insta-kill gimmicks. Again, these dinosaurs are not bad, and I love them being in the game, but they are a hindrance to the in-game ecosystem due to the player limit only being 100 people. Deinosuchus, whilst being an amazing source of terror and intrigue in the game, are an unkillable threat when not opposed by others of their own species. Their gimmick is to sit still, do nothing, and jump out insta-killing any unlucky player who happened to be thirsty at the wrong time. Not a bad thing, it's just the premise that they're taking up space in the game. When playing properly, and not like an idiot, you cannot die. Meaning any players playing this monster are taking up yummy food slots, but are not providing a resource to the ecosystem. Herrera, and I will not check if I'm saying the nickname wrong, is another bad luck insta-killing machine. Their gimmick is to jump out of trees and flatten your health bar, killing you instantly in most instances, or making you critical if you are a full-grown medium tier. Again, super cool dinosaur with a super fun gimmick. But these little monsters spend most of their time hiding in trees, and if played by a competent player, again, cannot die. When you mix small species that do not provide much of a resource which is already scarce with insta-killing death machines who cannot be reached in order to make them into a resource, which again is already scarce, you're making for a nightmare for the rest of the players in a server. Let's visualize a hypothetical that can happen in this game just to make my point. Players can play whatever they want, and in this server of a limit of 100 people, 10 players are playing as Deinosuchus spread around the map. Another 10 are playing Herrera, 10 are playing Hipsy, Trudon want to try hunting in a pack and making it viable, so there's 10 there, and 10 Danger Ducks have decided they want to dominate a large pond. 30 of these playables are unreachable as they are either in trees or waterways, and the other 20, whilst reachable, will barely provide 5% of one's hunger bar if you even manage to catch one. In this case scenario, 50% of a server in a game where the key to the game working is that every player is a resource waiting to be unlocked provide no value outside of a good chase and a way to get clapped. What you're left with is 50 players playing literally anything else being spread on a huge map. Herbivores aren't bumping into each other as often, making friends or herds, and carnivores are struggling to find anything to eat. And as I shared before in the playtesting, AI food won't always be there to save you. The Isle roster is not bad for having these playable dinosaurs, but the developers adding so many economical hindrances in the form of playable dinosaurs to a game that has servers this small is bad. The roadmap having this many small dinosaurs and dinosaurs built around being hidden away without the foresight of emboldening their server player counts was a mistake and will continue to be a mistake as long as they don't do something to fix the spreading of players on such a large map. Case in point, the one thing that would fix a large part of the problem is AI dinosaurs for players to hunt. They went from top priority on the roadmap to it'll come eventually, we just don't know when, to we've actually privatized the update roadmap and are just going to add things willy-nilly. Have they said when medium tier AI dinosaurs will come in a devlog? Nope. For all we know, they aren't coming at all. My next problem with the roadmap, according to what the developers are talking about for the far future, is a complicated one. And yet, this might be the shortest part of the entire video. They plan to add humans with guns to the Isle. Look, spending 10 years building a fan base that loves playing as dinosaurs, only to add humans with guns is just a bad idea. You have the most innovative and unique survival game on the market of, in my opinion, all time, and you want to make it like everything else. In my opinion, the day they add humans with guns and offer players the chance to kill other players on a whim for the joy of it is the day you trade one fan base for another. Or you might not get a new one, you'll just kill the one you have. Also, what the fuck is that? This is what the lead developer wants for this game. Dude, please don't do this. What game are you making? But there's something huge that I've been leaving out here, especially when it comes to the original roadmap. What the hell happened 5 years ago? What caused the Isle to break? What forced the hands of the developers to start the game from scratch? Well, it all comes down to one man that ruined everything. Deathly Rage. Deathly Rage was the lead programmer and sole coder for the legacy branch of the Isle, working alongside Dondi, the founder of Afterthought and the man with the vision to bring the Isle to life. However, whilst Dondi had the creative vision of the Isle, he didn't have the talent or skill to write code and sort out the talents of Deathly Rage in order to bring the Isle to life. And they even lived together back in 2017 for a few months whilst they worked on the game together. However, at some point, Dondi Dundee realized that Deathly Rage was sabotaging his game with poor coding practice and had him fired. The wiki even says that after Deathly Rage was fired, he severely damaged the code intentionally, and with Deathly Rage refusing to teach the next programmer how his code works, the game was forced into a corner, and that is where Operation Recode years later came into effect. And that's it, folks. The one developer that destroyed everything. Right? I mean, case closed, surely. This is all information that came from Dundee, the lead developer of the Isle. He wouldn't, lie about why his game had to start from scratch, right? Oh no. The developer that destroyed everything was not Deathly Rage. It was Dundee. What I'm about to talk about here, for legal reasons, is all word of mouth with veteran Isle players' experiences shared on the game in a Reddit page, and is all alleged. And by alleged, I mean hundreds of people came forward confirming what I'm about to talk about, and is all information that Dundee would rather forget. In 2017, the Isle was doing gangbusters, and it's here that Dundee moved Deathly Rage out into a 2-bedroom studio so they could work on the game together. Whilst working on the game, Dundee would invite women to the property. Deathly Rage mistaken Dundee's girlfriend for an ex-girlfriend and accidentally slipped up details that Dundee had been having random women over to do who knows what. Understandably, she lost her shit, making Dundee lose his shit and firing Deathly Rage without the common sense understanding that this man is the sole reason that your game exists. Dundee, realizing that after burning the bridge with Deathly Rage that he has no way to update the game with new content, actively slanders Deathly Rage, explaining that the Isle is completely destroyed and it's all his fault. And if you're wondering what kind of person Dundee is, the fandom wiki has Deathly Rage in the category of previous developers and slanders him for things that are not true, whereas Paradigm Shift is just listed as a previous working developer. Yeah. About Paradigm Shift, he was messaging minors inappropriate things and was being sheltered by Dundee, and only months later was let go once the pressure became too much to handle. Not even an alleged for Paradigm Shift, but a whole sentence slandering Deathly Rage. This here only occurred because Dundee lied to everyone. There is a lot that can be said about Dundee that I really just can't be bothered talking about. There are hundreds of videos out there of people's experiences with him being a total scumbag. If you're interested in knowing more from people who have done whole videos on the matter, I'll link Sid Alpha's investigations on Dundee and the Paradigm Shift scenario, and I'll also link X-Zager's video on how he was treated by Dundee over mild feedback. But I want to add something to this story that wraps this all up with a lovely blanket of pure cosmic karma. Dundee slandered Deathly Rage for being a terrible programmer and hating the project of the Isle. You want to know what Deathly Rage's response to this was? He changed his online name, founded his own studio, and crowdfunded his own dinosaur game. In 5 years, Dundee has managed to develop a one-map survival game hiding in a beta branch of his old dead game. Deathly Rage in 5 years has managed to make Path of Titans, a dinosaur game with 2 maps, double the amount of playable dinosaurs, customizable combat abilities along with buffs that apply physical characteristics, added quests, nesting, and the game is available on all consoles, PC, and mobile. Dundee has a trailer for a game whose map doesn't exist anymore, with 3 of the dinosaurs in the trailer still not being playable 5 years after its upload, with a $22 million head start. I don't need to dunk on Dundee. That's the most disrespectful slam dunk that I've ever seen! The Isle is the worst game in early access, and it is solely Dundee's Dondi's fault. Do I think Dondi is a fraud? Fuck no. He is a creative genius with a flair for the grand and dramatic in video games, held back by the worst work ethic on the planet, defending creeps, slandering hard workers, all the while he bitches and complains that people do not understand his vision. We get videos of him saying he wants to make his third-person dinosaur game first person. We get clips of him saying he doesn't even give a fuck about the Isle. And yet, here we are. Dondi, you've made a good game. Stop trying to elevate it into being more like something you know and just finish the game, man. Add more playables, fuck off humans and focus your resources. Add a tutorial space like Path of Titans did. Increase server player counts to 200 if it's viable. Switch Legacy over to the beta branches and make Avrima the real shit. Update the Steam page and sell skins if you need to make the game profitable again. And just allow your fans to finally be happy with the game you made them. The game you've made here is genius. Making it more like everything else, in my opinion, doesn't seem worth it. I mean, do what you want. Most players, unlike me, can just play on community servers and switch off all the shit they don't care about, but just... Also, what was that stream where you proposed the first-person camera perspective on dinosaurs? Are you just trying to make people think you're an idiot? Thank you for everyone that watched the video. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please consider becoming a member on YouTube or my Patreon. There is plenty of awesome early access content to see, and I'd love to make this my job and give you guys videos just like this on a monthly basis. It really would mean the world to me. Or just leave a like and a comment. Go on. Give me your thoughts on the video. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Links for support, as always, are in the description. And a very big thank you to every one of my supporters on screen, and an even bigger thank you to Papa Sun, The Lonely Shepard, Astral Phoenix, Fancy Feet with 3s instead of E's, Opossum Supremacist, The Superstorm 49, and Coffee.pot.cat. Thank you everyone, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye!